Homegrown hero, a morning coffee in Marrickville, the first priority for Australia's 31st Prime Minister. From working class Camperdown to waterfront Kirribilli, Anthony Albanese's inspiration to reach for the stars. Last drinks, the Morrisons farewell their old life as ScoMo finds a new way to spend his free time. The female force behind the wave of change, the band of independents off to paint Canberra teal. And Brad Fittler's blunt admission about the Blues origin campaign after Tom Trbojević's horror injury.
This is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Good evening. The winds of change have blown through Australian politics, sweeping away the coalition government and ushering in Labor for the first time in close to a decade. Widespread discontent with mainstream politics saw an historic swing towards the so-called teal independence. But Anthony Albanese has won enough seats to secure his position as Prime Minister. With around 68% of the vote counted, this is how the House of Representatives now looks. Labor has won 71 seats, the Coalition 51, and others, the Greens and the Independents, 15. 14 seats remain in doubt. Labor needs 76 to govern in its own right. Nine's political editor, Chris Uhlmann, begins our coverage.
Australia has a new Prime Minister.
Tonight, the Australian people have voted for change.
The son of a single mother rose from the poverty of a housing commission home to be the next resident of the Lodge.
My mother dreamt of a better life for me, and I hope that my journey in life inspires Australians to reach for the stars.
With the raucous backing of the faithful and the silent support of his partner, he pledged to heal a deeply divided nation.
I want to seek our common purpose and promote unity and optimism, not fear and division.
The country did unite in anger to expel Scott Morrison, who, surrounded by his family, left with grace.
I congratulate Anthony Albanese and the Labor Party, and I wish him and his government all the very best.
As the winds of change turned into an electoral cyclone that blew the Morrison government away. The Liberal Party was routed from coast to coast, with 17 seats gone, just one regained and 7 still in doubt, bleeding seats to Labor, Independents and even the Greens. Labor is inching towards 76 seats and majority government, and the coalition bench has been reduced to the low 60s.
I, as leader, take responsibility for the wins and the losses.
The first and only issue in this campaign was the unpopularity of Scott Morrison, and carrying that weight crushed the chances of his treasurer, one of many to fall to well-organised and well-funded independents.
I have been supported every single day of this job by the most remarkable partner in life in my wife, Amy Froenberg.
Showing that no parliamentary seat can be considered safe.
The communities are saying you do not own a seat. It is not yours by right.
The big winners of the night were the Teal Independents and the Greens, who will lift the number on the crossbench in Parliament from 6 to a likely 15.
This election didn't just change a government, it was a green slide.
This morning, the Marrickville boy returned to his roots.
Just another normal day in Marrickville.
He'll be sworn in as Australia's 31st Prime Minister first thing tomorrow, then immediately jet off to Tokyo to join the leaders of a security pact that unites Japan, the United States, India and Australia, formed to balance a more aggressive China.
The Quad Leaders meeting is an absolute priority for Australia.
Scott Morrison took comfort in his faith.
I'm very pleased that the last thing I say as PM is here.
And an Old Testament verse that speaks of keeping that faith in adversity.
Even if the fig tree does not blossom, and there is no fruit on the vines.
But it's not just this man and the Liberals that face a reckoning. The primary vote tells a deeper story, the decline of both major parties, the worst result by Conservative forces since Federation, and Labor remarkably going backwards on its last dismal result to post its worst number since 1934, which means it was not the first choice of nearly 7 out of 10 voters. Now the harsh light of scrutiny falls on another.
Something that's a big moment in my life, but what I want it to be is a big moment for the country. I do want to change the country. I want to change the way that politics operates in this country.
The audition is over and the really hard work lies ahead.
Hard work indeed. Political editor Chris Uhlmann joins me in the studio. Chris, what is the order of business?
Well, heading to Japan and a meeting of a crucial strategic partnership, Pete. There he'll get a crash course on the rapidly changing and dangerous world order. On return, he'll have to get his cabinet sorted and it will face deeply challenging economic times. And he'll quickly discover that making promises is easier than keeping them. Prices will continue to rise, interest rates are on the march. But we should all wish him and Labor well. When our governments succeed, Australians succeed. And when the history of this recent dark time is written, I suspect the Morrison government's response to the pandemic will be treated more kindly than this electoral rout would suggest. But make no mistake, politics in Australia changed profoundly last night. The traditional parties of government have a lot of soul searching to do. And the first order of business, Pete, is to restore trust.
All right, Chris, thank you. The outgoing Prime Minister hosted his last function at Kirribilli House this afternoon. Nine's Mark Burrows is there for us this evening. Mark, who was invited?
Well, Peter, by the looks of it, no big names, but what it was really just a chance for the Morrisons to say thank you to their staffers and families. And so it was, canapes and drinks on the front veranda of Sydney's best address.
No ukulele, instead Scott Morrison, giving an impromptu demonstration of his whip-cracking skills on the lawns of Kirribilli House. Earlier it was the outgoing Prime Minister enjoying a few beers, looking philosophical about his demise, at the same time wondering perhaps what went wrong. Wife Jenny was looking more upbeat, appearing with a tray of margaritas. At one stage, Mr Morrison spotted his wife and the couple, no doubt relieved the campaign was over, kissed and then took in the view. The afternoon entertainment was different and included a touch of country in the form of whip cracking. Daughter Abby had a go and nearly collected the outgoing PM's head. Then Mr Morrison took control, letting off steam after campaigning for 42 days, but unable to round up enough votes for a win.
And it will be back to the Shire for the Morrisons this week. That will allow Anthony Albanese to move from his digs at Marrickville and back into Kirribilli House as the next resident. Peter.
Good on you, Mark. Thank you. It was Anthony Albanese's night, but the 2022 election will also go down in history as Independence Day. Teal candidates, all women, have picked off heartland Liberal seats in Sydney and right across the country.
The tide was turning, and it was turning teal. The Allegra army in raptures as independent Allegra Spender made a triumphant entrance into the once blue-ribbon Liberal electorate of Wentworth, held by Dave Sharma. Last night, the Sharma camp didn't concede, waiting for votes to be counted.
Try telling that to these people. I mean, look, they are going off.
But the more they waited, the more the votes for Teal just kept coming.
We have put our faith on women in politics.
And this morning at Bondi Beach, they were still cheering.
We wanted a community representative in Parliament, not Scott Morrison's representative in Wentworth.
The Teal wave began 3 years ago when Zali Steggall took Warringah from former PM Tony Abbott. Last night she retained her seat and then some.
It's a real moment for the major parties to rethink the arrogance that they don't have to consult with communities anymore.
Well, McKellar, all I can say is we did it!
Further north in McKellar, Dr Sophie Scomps unseated another Liberal, Jason Falinski.
73 years we have been a safe seat. No more, guys.
The Teal wave also swept North Sydney. Voters choosing Charity Chief Executive Kylie Tink over Liberal Trent Zimmerman.
We as a community have risen and taken what was considered a safe Liberal seat.
The biggest Liberal scalp for the Teals, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg in the Melbourne electorate of Kooyong.
Clearly the people have spoken and the coalition needs to hear what has been said and to act on it.
Dr Monique Ryan, the non-politician independent, unseating a man many saw as a future PM. And another Melbourne Liberal is out. Teal independent and former ABC journalist Zoe Daniel, the new member for Goldstein.
The Liberal Party had drifted so far to the right that people who sit closer to the centre, who normally vote Liberal, just didn't have anyone to vote for.
And in the West, the curtain fell on Liberal Celia Hammond, Kate Chaney flying the Teal flag in the Perth seat of Curtin.
The Liberal Party is unlikely to feel entitled to this seat again.
The Teal candidates have been well-funded and well-organised independents with a strong community volunteer base, targeting coalition or blue seats with green ideals on climate. They're financially backed by Simon Holmes à Court's Climate 200, who says he's now hands-off.
The Climate 200 is 11,200 donors from around the country. We have donors from every seat, but our role with these campaigns finished when we made the last donation about maybe 2 weeks ago.
Across the country, the Teal Independents campaign on a platform of dealing with climate change and addressing integrity in politics. But one thing that can't be ignored is they're all women.
The Teals are now real, taking their place in the nation's House of Representatives. 6 fresh faces giving an extraordinary bump to the number of women in Canberra. But they say they're not a party or a bloc.
I'm grateful for the money that has been raised, but I'm going to be absolutely standing on this community, on these values, and very much leading as an independent.
The Teals may not be a party, but they certainly know how to. Lizzie Pearl, 9 News.
There have been some major swings in New South Wales marginal seats and a shock loss for a former Labor senator. The election result clearly highlighting a mood for change.
The suburbs along the Parramatta River, from Drummoyne to Toongabbie and along the M4 to Mount Druitt, are once again a wall of Labor red.
It feels like we've got a more optimistic and hopeful future for this country.
In Reid, from 5 Dock to Homebush and Silverwater, Labor's win was swift and convincing. The new member, the daughter of migrants who fled Laos because of the Vietnam War.
A young woman came up to me and she said that she was of Laotian descent and she was incredibly proud to be able to vote for me.
The seat of John Howard is almost certainly going to fall to Labor too. Bennelong has had an 8% swing to the ALP, with Labor in front in the seat that runs from Gladesville through Ryde and up to North Epping, while a doctor from Umina secured the Central Coast for Anthony Albanese for the first time in a decade.
I'm extremely humbled that the people of Robertson have entrusted me with their vote, and I won't let them down.
The swing against the Liberal Party was violent in Robertson, Labor comfortably winning the seat that represents Gosford, Terrigal, Erina and Woy Woy. Dr Gordon Reid, the new representative.
I want to make sure that it's cheaper and easier to see a doctor. I want to make sure our road infrastructure gets upgraded.
Parramatta was retained by Labor with a swing in its favour. The Hawkesbury and Blue Mountains are no longer in Australia's most marginal seat. The ALP's Susan Templeman earning a big swing to her in Macquarie, while Andrew Constance could be the lone victory for the Libs, but it's close.
I'm encouraged. I want to thank the community for supporting us.
Gilmore on the South Coast is going down to the wire. Andrew Constance earning a nice swing, but the Greens are keeping Labor in the hunt.
What we're seeing and indicative in many of the results across the nation is that people don't want to see negative politics.
The only black spot on Anthony Albanese's night was Christina Keneally and party officers' decision to parachute her into a seat in southwest Sydney, and they paid the price. It was an unmitigated disaster.
Somebody who's not connected to our community, who have got no roots in this community,
that the Labor Party decided to impose on us.
A 14% ultra-safe Labor seat lost by Keneally, a catastrophic 16% swing against Labor. Independent Di Lee will now represent the electorate, which takes in Chipping Norton, Liverpool, Cabramatta and over to Adenza Park. And she's pretty happy about it.
I've always said that we can change this community.
It's safe to say after a loss like this, Christina Keneally's political career is dead, buried and cremated. Chris O'Keefe, 9 News.
It is time now to check in on today's weather. Good evening, Amber.
Good evening to you, Pete. It has been a cool and grey day with light to moderate southeasterly winds. We've seen a widespread 1 to 5 millimetres of rain across the Sydney Basin. Heavier falls in Toongabbie, picking up 14 millimetres, 12 millimetres falling in Terry Hills and 10 in Avalon and Belrose. After a mild low of 13 degrees, the city only reached a top of 18, but it felt closer to 15 degrees with the wind chill. Our west dipping to 13 degrees overnight before warming up to 19 mid-morning, quickly dropping back down to around 16 degrees this afternoon. It will be a few days before we see the sunshine again. I'll be back with a full forecast a little later, Pete.
Amber, thank you. OK, from Piermont Bridge Road in Camperdown to the most famous house in Kirribilli, we look at the political and personal life of Australia's 31st Prime Minister. The world reacts to the changing of our political guard, and not everyone is unhappy to see ScoMo go. Art After Dark, the plan to pump Piermont full of late-night entertainment. And Stranger Than Fiction, the former child star who's taken on a real-life leading role.